For more on this is Tom Corben. He's a research fellow in the Foreign Policy and Defence Program at the United States Studies Centre. Tom, good to see you. Thanks for your time. As Olivia just mentioned there, we're expecting a formal announcement around AUKUS perhaps later this week. Why does it make sense to have Japan as the first add-on to this grouping?
I think, first of all, it's important to clarify that what we saw written out in the AUKUS Joint Defence Minister statement yesterday, I believe, or in the last 48 hours at the very least, is that the three countries agree that considering that Japan should be the so-called fourth party to be invited to collaborate with AUKUS is a common position between the three countries. There has been no formal extension of an offer for Japan to formally dock into AUKUS Pillar 2, whether that's all of the AUKUS Pillar 2 projects or any specific projects. But I think what is significant here is that I think for the first time, the three core AUKUS countries are on the record together in a single statement saying that they think this is a good idea. I think the reason that they think it's a good idea is because over the last couple of years in particular, Japan has shown that it's not only willing to invest in its own military capabilities to hold up a favourable regional balance of power in the Indo-Pacific in ways that Australia, the United Kingdom and the US are also doing, but that it does actually have niche technological advantages that it could bring to the table in fields like quantum, unmanned systems, cybersecurity, AI. These are all things that the AUKUS countries are already looking at through Pillar 2. And so bringing a close strategic partner like Japan into the fold, notwithstanding some of the information security risks that still remain there, makes a lot of sense.
So how big could this alliance get, Tom? I mean, Canada and New Zealand have been mentioned as other options. Do you expect there might be further countries eyeing this off and pitching up to join?
Look, it's way too early to speculate as to how big AUKUS Pillar 2 could eventually become. I think a point that has been emphasised in Australia, the United Kingdom and the United States when it comes to talking about the potential expansion of Pillar 2 is that there is still a lot of work to be done between those three core AUKUS countries when it comes to setting the conditions to get collaboration right between those three countries. I mean, Australia and the United States and the United Kingdom have been trying to do this sort of thing for at least a decade now. And really what AUKUS has done has provided additional momentum and additional political cover for the three countries to actually go ahead and make some of the really difficult changes at home that are required to get this sort of international collaboration working properly. So the best example of that would be the changes to US defense export controls that we saw passed in annual defense legislation in the United States earlier this year, and some corresponding changes that have been proposed to the Australian Parliament and passed, I believe. That's a sign that the three countries are trying to get the playing field or the enabling environment right to enable this sort of cooperation. And in that respect, bringing fourth parties like Japan into the conversation is a sensible idea, but we also need to balance that with the need to get the playing conditions right before we rush into bringing in fourth parties.
Well, you're right. I mean, just when it's Australia, the UK and the US, there's still been a few teething issues when it comes to the subs, which I think is the main thing people think of when they think of AUKUS. The timeline already seems to be blowing out, doesn't it, when it comes to the delivery of those nuclear subs to Australia?
Look, if you mean that the timeline is blowing out in the sense that there has been a lot of noise about the budget situation in the United States and Australia with respect to the construction and procurement of submarines in recent months, then I think there are some reasonable grounds for concern there, given the long-standing issues with the US defence industrial base when it comes to submarine production and Australia's reliance on that submarine industrial base to get its own submarine capabilities in short order. What I think received less attention was the really significant investment that not just the United States, but Australia also made in the US submarine industrial base this year. I believe it's over $10 billion, maybe $11 billion US that the United States has announced for just this year alone to go into its submarine industrial base, which is significantly more than the Biden administration projected it would spend over the next 5 years when it put forward its budget papers last year. And if you add on top of that the money that Australia is contributing to that industrial base, I don't actually think that the concerns are as warranted right now. Yes, these are risks that need to be managed going forward, but this is a multi-decade program. And so we were always going to have to manage these latent risks, which could, they were never really going to go away. They were just things that had to be managed.
Tom Corben, really appreciate your analysis. Thanks for joining us.